Everyone wants to speak perfect English, but only a few actually achieve it. Why? Because they focus on the wrong methods. What if I told you there's a secret way to master English in 2025 without boring grammar lessons or endless memorization? Welcome to English Tone, the place where learning English feels like a story, not a lesson. Here, we don't just teach English, we make you experience it. If you want to improve your English effortlessly, stick around till the end. Liam had always dreamed of speaking English fluently. He imagined himself confidently talking to people, effortlessly holding conversations without hesitation. But in reality, things were very different. No matter how hard he tried, he felt stuck. It all started when he was a teenager. His school required students to study English, but for him, it was just another subject, a set of rules to memorize, a list of vocabulary words to learn. He spent hours going through grammar books, underlining definitions, and highlighting rules. He learned the difference between past perfect and past continuous, the correct placement of adverbs, and even complex sentence structures. On paper, he seemed to be doing well. His written exams always had high scores. His teachers praised his essays. But there was one big problem. He couldn't speak. Whenever he tried to have a conversation in English, something strange happened. His brain froze. He knew the words. He knew the rules. But when the moment came to speak, everything disappeared from his mind. His heart would start racing, his hands would get sweaty, and his tongue felt heavy. Liam tried different methods to improve. He memorized long lists of words, thinking that a richer vocabulary would make speaking easier. Every night, he sat with a dictionary, writing down 5 new words and their meanings. Effervescent, melancholy, discombobulate. They looked impressive on paper, but when he spoke, he never found a way to use them naturally. He also watched countless grammar videos. He followed every tip he found online, recording himself speaking, practicing tongue twisters, even standing in front of the mirror pretending to have a conversation. At first, he was hopeful. This time, I will get it, he told himself. He rehearsed dialogues, speaking slowly, carefully pronouncing each word. He imagined real-life situations, ordering food in a restaurant, introducing himself to a stranger, making small talk at a party. But when he had to talk to real people, everything fell apart. One day, a tourist approached him in his hometown and asked for directions. Liam knew exactly what he wanted to say in his native language, but in English, his mind went blank. His tongue fumbled. His words came out slow and awkward. "I go ya, turn left a big building." The tourist gave him a confused look, nodded politely, and walked away. Liam felt his face burn with embarrassment. Why is this so difficult? He thought. He started to lose confidence. Speaking English felt like an impossible task. He avoided situations where he had to speak. Whenever his friends practiced English together, he stayed quiet, afraid of making mistakes. But deep down, he knew he couldn't give up. That's when he decided to take a bold step. He would join an online English conversation group. He had read stories of people improving their fluency by talking with native speakers. Maybe this was his chance. With a mix of excitement and fear, Liam signed up for his first session. He checked his microphone, adjusted his headphones, and practiced introducing himself. "Hi, my name is Liam. I am from..." He repeated it a few times, making sure his pronunciation sounded clear. He even wrote down a few sentences in case he forgot what to say. When the session started, his heart pounded. His palms were sweaty. He could hear other people talking fluently, laughing, and discussing different topics. Then came his turn. The host of the session said, "Liam, would you like to introduce yourself?" He unmuted his mic, took a deep breath, and said, "Hello." But before he could continue, the native speaker started responding. "Hey, Liam, nice to meet you. Where are you from? So, tell us a bit about yourself." The voices came fast, too fast. Liam couldn't process what they were saying. His brain panicked. He struggled to find the right words. Ah, yeah. The silence grew awkward. Someone else jumped in to speak, and Liam quickly muted his mic. His face was burning with embarrassment. The session continued, but he couldn't focus. All he could think about was his failure. The other participants sounded so natural, so confident, and there he was stumbling over simple sentences. When the session ended, he closed his laptop and sighed. Maybe I'll never be good at English, he whispered to himself. That night, as he lay in bed, he felt defeated. He had tried so hard, but still, he couldn't speak fluently. He wondered if he should just give up. But then a small thought crossed his mind. What if I'm learning English the wrong way? This thought, though small, planted a seed of curiosity in his mind. And soon, he would make an unexpected discovery, one that would change everything. Liam sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. His hands hovered over the keyboard as he hesitated. The join meeting button stared back at him. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He had been practicing for weeks, speaking in front of the mirror, recording himself, rehearsing introductions. Yet, now that it was time to speak to real people, his courage wavered. What if they don't understand me? What if I freeze up? What if I embarrass myself? A part of him wanted to close his laptop and forget about it. But another part of him, the part that had been dreaming of speaking fluent English, pushed him forward. You have to try. He took a deep breath and clicked Join Meeting. The screen loaded, and suddenly, faces appeared, some smiling, some focused. It was an online conversation group for English learners and native speakers. People from different countries had joined, eager to practice their speaking skills. The host, a friendly-looking man with an American accent, greeted everyone. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're excited for today's session. Let's introduce ourselves. Who wants to go first? Liam swallowed hard. He had written down a few sentences just in case he forgot what to say. He glanced at his notebook. Hi, my name is Liam. I want to improve my English because he had practiced it dozens of times. It should be easy. A few people introduced themselves. They spoke with confidence, their words flowing smoothly. Some had accents, but they didn't hesitate. Then the host smiled. Liam, would you like to introduce yourself? His heart stopped. His palms turned sweaty. Slowly, he unmuted his mic. Hello, he stuttered. His voice trembled slightly. The host smiled. Hey, Liam, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Then, before Liam could reply, other voices jumped in. Oh, cool. What do you do? Yeah, and how long have you been learning English? Do you like learning languages? The words hit him like a wave. Fast, overwhelming, unstoppable. His brain struggled to process the sounds. He caught a few words, where, how long, like learning, but by the time he formed an answer, they had moved on to another question. His mind went blank. I am. The silence stretched. His tongue felt heavy, his throat dry. The pressure of so many eyes on him made it worse. His breathing became shallow. He wanted to speak, but no words came out. After a few more seconds, the host gently moved on to the next person. Liam quickly muted his mic. His face burned with embarrassment. He had failed. The conversation continued without him. Others spoke fluently, laughing, discussing different topics with ease. He listened, but he barely understood. They spoke too fast. Their words blended together. It wasn't like the slow, clear English in his textbooks or YouTube lessons. He felt small, invisible. The session ended an hour later. Liam sat frozen in his chair, staring at his reflection on the dark screen. His body was tense, his mind racing. What just happened? He had spent years studying English, yet when it came time to speak, he couldn't do it. His grammar knowledge, his vocabulary, it all felt useless. For the first time, he wondered if maybe he just wasn't good enough. Maybe some people were born to speak languages easily, and others, like him, weren't. The thought made his chest tighten. He closed his laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Why does this keep happening to me? It wasn't the first time he had struggled. Every time he tried to speak English in real life, he froze. It had happened when he tried to order food at a restaurant, when he met a tourist who asked for directions, when he tried speaking with his classmates in English. Maybe I'll never be good at English, he whispered. He felt defeated. That night, he didn't sleep well. His mind replayed the embarrassing moment again and again. The next morning, Liam woke up feeling exhausted. He grabbed his phone and opened YouTube. He searched for how to improve spoken English fast. The screen filled with video titles. 5 secret tips to speak English fluently. Learn English in 30 days. Stop translating. Think in English. He clicked on the first one. The speaker, a confident English teacher, promised simple techniques that will make you fluent in weeks. Liam watched carefully, taking notes. The advice sounded great. Speak every day. Think in English. Stop translating. Listen to native speakers. But something fell off. I've tried all this before, Liam thought, and it still didn't work. He sighed and kept scrolling. He found a new video, Why You Can't Speak English and How to Fix It. Curious, he clicked on it. The teacher in the video had a different message. The reason most people struggle with speaking English isn't because they aren't smart enough. It's because they are learning it the wrong way. Liam sat up, interested. You see, the teacher continued, most learners focus too much on studying grammar and memorizing vocabulary. But fluency doesn't come from knowing grammar. It comes from speaking without fear, without hesitation. Something clicked in Liam's mind. He had spent years learning grammar, memorizing words, and practicing alone. But he had never truly practiced speaking in real conversations. I need to change my approach, he thought. He decided to give it one more shot. But this time, he would do things differently. This time, he wouldn't just study English. He would live it. And with that decision, his real journey to fluency began. Liam felt lost. The failed conversation in the online English group still haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the rapid speech, the words flying past him like bullets. He kept replaying the moment he froze, unable to respond. He had spent years studying English, yet when the real test came, he failed. Maybe I should just give up, he muttered, tossing his phone onto his bed. The thought of quitting English felt both painful and strangely comforting. If he quit, he wouldn't have to face the humiliation of freezing up again. He wouldn't have to feel the sting of failure. But deep down, he knew he couldn't quit. He had dreamed of speaking English fluently for years. It wasn't just about impressing people. It was about opening new doors. It was about watching movies without subtitles, traveling to different countries, making international friends, and maybe even working abroad one day. If he gave up now, he would regret it forever. But what else could he do? He had followed every piece of advice, memorized thousands of words, studied grammar rules, practiced speaking alone in his room. Yet, none of it worked when it truly mattered. Maybe I need a break, he thought. Frustrated and exhausted, he grabbed his laptop and decided to watch a movie. Not to study English, just to escape for a while. Liam scrolled through the movie options. He didn't want anything serious, just something light to distract him. His eyes landed on an old favorite, The Avengers. I've watched this before in my language. Might as well watch it in English. He clicked play. At first, he turned on the subtitles in his native language, as he always did. But halfway through the first scene, something strange happened. He heard Tony Stark say something sarcastic. The English words were there, but his eyes immediately darted to the subtitles to understand. He wasn't even listening properly. Wait a minute, am I really learning anything this way? An idea struck him. He switched the subtitles to English. It was hard, really hard. Some sentences made sense, but others moved too fast. He caught words he recognized, but the meaning often slipped away before he could fully grasp it. Then a crazy thought entered his mind. What if I turned off the subtitles completely? A voice in his head protested. You won't understand anything. You'll just waste time. But another part of him, the part that was tired of failing, wanted to try. What do I have to lose? He clicked the subtitles off button. For the first few minutes, he panicked. The characters spoke quickly. He caught only bits and pieces. Weapon, dangerous. Let's go. The rest blurred into a stream of sounds. His brain screamed at him. You don't understand. Turn the subtitles back on. But he forced himself to keep watching. And then something incredible happened. He stopped focusing on understanding every single word. Instead, he focused on the context. He watched the actors' expressions. He noticed their tone of voice. He paid attention to body language. Suddenly, the story started making sense, even without understanding every word. Liam was shocked. Wait, am I actually understanding this? For the first time, he realized something important. English wasn't about translating words. It was about experiencing the language. As the movie continued, Liam noticed something else. Certain words and phrases kept repeating. He grabbed his notebook and started writing them down. What's going on? You've got to be kidding me. I don't have time for this. Let's get out of here. These weren't difficult words. He had seen them before. But he had never paid attention to how native speakers use them in real conversations. He also noticed something surprising. Native speakers didn't speak like textbooks. They used contractions like gonna instead of going to. They shortened sentences like let me see instead of let me see. They spoke in rhythms that textbooks never taught. No wonder I struggle to understand real conversations. Liam thought. He had spent years studying formal English, but real English was different. He made a decision. I won't just watch movies for fun anymore. I'll use them to truly learn English. The next day, Liam picked another movie, this time without subtitles from the start. He followed a new system. 1. Watch the scene once without subtitles. Try to guess the meaning from context. 2. Watch again with English subtitles. Note down words and phrases he didn't understand. 3. Pause and repeat difficult sentences out loud. Try to copy the actor's pronunciation. It was slow at first, but within a week, something incredible happened. He started recognizing phrases in conversations. He started predicting what characters would say next. He started thinking in English instead of translating. For the first time in his life, English felt natural. And that's when he had the biggest realization of all. He had been learning English the wrong way his whole life. Grammar exercises, vocabulary lists, and textbooks had their place. But real fluency? It came from exposure, from hearing, repeating, and experiencing the language like a native speaker. No wonder I couldn't speak before, he thought. He had memorized English, but he had never truly lived it. That was about to change. With this new mindset, Liam was ready to transform his learning completely. He didn't just want to watch movies. He wanted to think, speak, and experience English every single day. He was done feeling embarrassed, done feeling stuck. This was his journey, and for the first time, he felt like he was finally on the right path. And little did he know, this was only the beginning. Liam had finally discovered what had been holding him back all these years. He had been learning English in an unnatural way. He had been forcing himself to memorize rules and vocabulary lists instead of truly experiencing the language. But now, after his unexpected discovery with movies, he was ready to change his entire approach to learning English. He was done with dry, boring methods. He wanted to learn smartly, not just work harder. This was the moment that transformed his journey forever. One morning, Liam laced up his running shoes and headed to the park. Normally, he would jog in silence or listen to music. But today, he had a new idea. What if I listened to English while running? He opened his phone, searched for English learning podcasts, and clicked on one titled, Real Life English. how to speak naturally. At first, it was difficult. The host spoke in casual, natural English, not the slow, scripted sentences from his textbooks. They laughed, used slang, and even interrupted each other. This is exactly how native speakers talk. At first, he struggled to keep up. Some sentences flew past him, just like in the online conversation group. But he reminded himself, it's okay not to understand everything. Instead of pausing or getting frustrated, he let the words flow into his ears. He focused on the rhythm, the tone, and the repeated phrases. After 20 minutes of jogging, something surprising happened. He understood more than he expected. Not every word, but enough to get the main idea. If I do this every day, my brain will get used to it. From that day on, he made a rule. Every time he jogged, he would listen to English. It wasn't studying. It wasn't boring. It was just a part of his life. And that was the first sign that he was finally learning the smart way. Liam had another problem. For years, he had been memorizing difficult words from vocabulary books, believing that big words would make him sound smart. But every time he tried using them, something felt wrong. Native speakers didn't say utilize when they could say use. They didn't say commence when they could say start. No wonder I sounded unnatural. He realized he needed to stop memorizing individual words and start learning phrases instead. So, he made a list of real-life expressions from podcasts and movies. How's it going? Instead of how are you? I'll get back to you. Instead of I will reply later. No worries instead of it's okay. What have you been up to? Instead of what are you doing? Every day, he picked 5 phrases and used them throughout his day. At first, it felt unnatural, but the more he heard them and said them, the more they became a part of him. He was no longer translating from his native language. He was thinking in English. That was true progress. Even though Liam was improving, he still had one fear: speaking. His biggest weakness was not knowing what to say in conversations. That's when he heard about an idea from a language expert. If you want to think in English, start writing a personal journal in English every day. At first, he hesitated. What if I make grammar mistakes? Then, he reminded himself, mistakes are part of learning. That night, he opened a blank notebook and wrote his first journal entry in English. Today, I felt good. I listened to an English podcast while jogging. I didn't understand everything, but I understood the main idea. I also learned a new phrase. No worries. I like this phrase. I will use it tomorrow. It was simple. It had mistakes, but it was his thoughts in English. And that was the goal. Every night, he wrote just a few sentences. He didn't worry about grammar or spelling. He just focused on expressing himself. And the more he did it, the easier it became. Within weeks, something amazing happened. When he spoke, words came faster. He no longer had to think in his native language first. He had already practiced expressing his thoughts in English. He was training his brain to think in English naturally. And for the first time, he felt like he was becoming fluent. Liam knew he was on the right path. He was no longer forcing himself to study. He was living English, and he was enjoying it. His new learning routine looked like this: morning jog, English podcast. Throughout the day, use new phrases. Night, write an English journal. It was simple. It was fun. And most importantly, it worked. His confidence grew every day. He still made mistakes. He still didn't understand everything. But he had stopped caring about being perfect because he finally understood fluency isn't about perfection. It's about confidence. And Liam was finally confident. One evening, as he sat at his desk, he received a message from the same English conversation group he had failed in before. His heart pounded. Should I try again? A part of him still feared embarrassment. But another part, the new Liam, was ready. He clicked join. This time, when the conversation started, he didn't panic. He listened. He understood. And when it was his turn, he spoke without hesitation. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but confidently. And that made all the difference. Liam had started as someone who struggled with English, someone who memorized words but couldn't speak, someone who feared real conversations, someone who almost gave up. But by learning the smart way, he had transformed. Now he was living English. Now he was thinking in English. Now he was finally speaking English with confidence. His journey wasn't over. But for the first time, he knew he was on the right path. And the best part? He was just getting started. Liam had been on a journey, a long, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately rewarding journey to master English. He had started with struggles, faced failures, and discovered new, smarter ways to learn. Every step of the way, he had improved, but there was one thing left to prove to himself. Could he finally speak English fluently in a real conversation? It was time for the big test. One evening, Liam was scrolling through his phone when a notification popped up. English conversation group, open discussion tomorrow. Join us. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the group. It was the same online conversation group he had failed in before. Back then, he had barely spoken. Back then, he had felt humiliated when he couldn't keep up. Back then, he had thought about giving up. But now, things were different. Liam hesitated for a moment. What if I still mess up? Then he took a deep breath and reminded himself. He had been listening to English podcasts every day. He had been using real-life phrases instead of difficult words. He had been writing in his English journal every night. He was ready. So, without overthinking, he clicked join. The test had begun. The next day, Liam sat in front of his laptop, headphones on, microphone ready. The group started introducing themselves. One by one, they spoke. He could hear different accents: American, British, Australian. Some spoke fast. Some spoke slow. But unlike before, something felt different. This time, Liam wasn't panicking. This time, he wasn't translating in his head. Instead, he was just listening, not word by word, not trying to understand every single thing, just getting the meaning. And before he knew it, his turn arrived. The host of the session called his name. Liam, would you like to introduce yourself? This was it, his moment. Before, he would have frozen. He would have worried about making mistakes. He would have doubted every single word before speaking. But now he just smiled and spoke. Hey everyone, my name's Liam. I'm really excited to be here today. I've been learning English for a while now, and I've finally built the confidence to join a conversation group again. No long pauses, no overthinking, no fear. The words just flowed. And the best part? The others understood him perfectly. After his introduction, the discussion continued. People started sharing their experiences with learning English. Someone from Brazil talked about how they struggled with pronunciation. A woman from Japan said she had difficulty understanding fast speech. A man from Germany explained how he used music to improve his vocabulary. Liam listened closely. Then, when the moment felt right, he jumped into the conversation. Oh, I totally understand that. I used to struggle with fast conversations too. But I started listening to podcasts while jogging, and that really helped. The host responded, oh wow, that's a great idea. Which podcast do you recommend? Without hesitation, Liam replied, I love real-life English. They teach natural phrases that people actually use. And just like that, he was in the middle of a flowing conversation. No freezing, no panic, no awkward silence, just natural communication. As the discussion continued, Liam noticed something amazing. He wasn't translating anymore. Before, every English sentence had started in his native language. He had to translate in his mind, organize the sentence, and then speak. But now, the words came directly in English. His thoughts weren't stuck in his native language. He had reached the biggest milestone of all. He was thinking in English, and that changed everything. Because now, English wasn't just something he studied. It was something he lived. An hour passed. Liam had been part of the discussion the entire time. He laughed. He shared stories. He even asked other people questions. And the most surprising thing? He wasn't worried about mistakes. Before, he had been afraid of using the wrong word or mixing up grammar. But now, he realized nobody cared about small mistakes. People weren't focused on his grammar. They were focused on his ideas. And that was what fluency truly meant. As the conversation came to an end, the host smiled and said, "Liam, it's been great having you here. You speak really well. How long have you been learning English?" Liam paused. He thought back to the boy who had once frozen in this very same group. The boy who had memorized words but couldn't speak. The boy who had almost given up. But now, he wasn't that boy anymore. He was someone new, someone confident, someone who had mastered English in a smart way. So he simply smiled and replied, "It's been a long journey, but honestly, I feel like it's just the beginning." And as he left the call that night, Liam knew he had passed the big test. And from that moment on, he was no longer just a learner. He was a fluent English speaker. This wasn't just about English anymore. This was about overcoming fear. This was about gaining confidence. This was about proving to himself that he could do it. Liam's journey to master English in 2025 had started with struggles. But through persistence, the right methods, and a smart approach, he had achieved what once felt impossible. And the best part? He knew that anyone could do the same. Because fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to keep going. And Liam? He was just getting started. One evening, as Liam sat in a cozy cafe sipping his coffee, an old friend, Ethan, walked in. They hadn't seen each other in a while. Ethan had known Liam back when he struggled with English, back when he avoided conversations, afraid of embarrassing himself. As they sat down to talk, Ethan noticed something different. Liam wasn't hesitating. He wasn't searching for words or translating in his head. He spoke freely, naturally, like English was a part of him. After a while, Ethan leaned in and asked, "Liam, how did you become so fluent?" Liam blinked, caught off guard. That question, "How did you become fluent?" was something he had never stopped to think about. For the longest time, he had been focused on improving, learning, practicing. But now, sitting there, it hit him. He had already arrived. He had done it, and not by memorizing textbooks, not by forcing himself to learn grammar rules, but by something completely different. Liam took a deep breath and thought back to his journey. He had spent years thinking that fluency came from classrooms, textbooks, and memorization. But in reality, his biggest progress had come when he stopped studying English like a subject and started living it like a part of his daily life. He smiled and told Ethan, "It happened when I stopped trying to be perfect and just started using English every day." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "But how? You must have studied a lot." Liam shook his head. "Not in the way most people think. I found better ways." Liam explained what had truly made the difference. 1. He stopped memorizing words and started using phrases. Instead of making long vocabulary lists, he started learning how words worked in real conversations. He focused on phrases that native speakers actually used. He learned collocations, words that naturally go together, like make a decision instead of do a decision. He didn't just learn hello and how are you. He learned how people actually greeted each other in different situations. 2. He listened to English like a child learns a language. He stopped focusing on understanding every word. Instead, he focused on getting the meaning. He listened to podcasts, movies, and real conversations without subtitles. He didn't pause to translate. He let the words flow. Over time, his brain naturally started recognizing patterns. 3. He made English a part of his daily routine. He didn't set aside time to study English. Instead, he fit English into his life. He listened to English podcasts while jogging. He changed his phone's language to English. He started thinking in English instead of his native language. He wrote a personal journal in English every night. 4. He practiced speaking, even when he was alone. He had once feared speaking in front of others. So he started small. He spoke to himself in English while walking. He described his day out loud. He even narrated simple things like making coffee. Now I'm pouring the water. Now I'm adding sugar. This simple habit made speaking natural instead of stressful. 5. He stopped fearing mistakes. The biggest reason he had struggled before was fear. But then he realized mistakes are a part of learning. Nobody cared if he made small grammar errors. What mattered was that he could communicate. The moment he stopped fearing mistakes, his progress skyrocketed. As Liam finished explaining, Ethan sat back, speechless. "That's it," Ethan finally said. "You didn't do grammar exercises for hours? You didn't memorize thousands of words?" Liam chuckled. "No, I just found a way to make English a part of my life." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "I've been doing it all wrong. I've been trying so hard to study, but I never really used English." Liam smiled. "Exactly. If you want to speak fluently, you have to live the language." That conversation changed something in Liam. For the first time, he realized fluency wasn't about studying English. It was about becoming comfortable with it. It was about removing fear. It was about enjoying the language, not struggling with it. That was the real turning point. Because from that moment on, Liam didn't just feel like an English learner. He felt like an English speaker. And he knew anyone could do the same. They just had to stop learning English like a school subject and start living it like a language. That was the key. And that was how he truly mastered English. Liam's story isn't just about him. It's about anyone who wants to speak English fluently. So if you're struggling with English, if you feel stuck, if you feel like no matter how much you study, you can't speak, remember Liam's turning point. Fluency comes when you stop memorizing and start using English. When you stop fearing mistakes and start speaking. When you stop treating English like a school subject and start living it as a language. And when that moment comes, when you suddenly realize you're speaking without effort, that's when you know you've reached your own turning point. And just like Liam, you'll finally be able to say, "I didn't study English. I lived it." The lesson for you. Liam's journey wasn't just about learning English. It was about transforming the way he approached it. For years, he believed that English was something you had to study, memorize grammar rules, repeat vocabulary lists, and take endless notes. But in reality, the secret was something entirely different. English isn't something you study. It's something you experience. It's not about how many grammar exercises you complete. It's not about how many words you memorize. It's about how much you actually use the language. So if you're struggling with English, feeling stuck like Liam once did, here's what you need to do. 1. Watch movies the right way. Oh, don't just rely on subtitles. Listen actively. Oh, pause, repeat, and mimic how native speakers talk. Oh, pick up common phrases, expressions, and pronunciation. 2. Listen to real conversations. Oh, podcasts, interviews, and real-life dialogues are your best teachers. Oh, forget about understanding every single word. Focus on the meaning. Oh, your brain will naturally pick up patterns over time. 3. Think in English. Oh, don't translate from your native language. Oh, describe your surroundings in English in your head. Oh, talk to yourself. It's the best practice you'll ever get. 4. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Oh, mistakes aren't failures. They're signs of progress. Oh, nobody speaks perfectly all the time, not even native speakers. Oh, the more mistakes you make, the faster you improve. 5. Make English a part of your life. Oh, change your phone's language to English. Oh, write a daily journal in English. Oh, speak, listen, and think in English every single day. Liam's story proves one thing. You don't become fluent by studying English. You become fluent by living it. And now, it's your turn. Start today. Speak without fear. Immerse yourself in the language. And one day, just like Liam, you'll look back and realize you didn't just learn English. You mastered it. If you want to master English like Liam, start today. Watch, listen, and practice daily. And don't forget, learning English should be fun. Subscribe to English Tone for more exciting stories and lessons. Like this video, share it with your friends, and tell us in the comments, what's your biggest challenge in learning English? See you in the next video.